Hey everyone, it's Bert Rio, and I'm here to this my review for Weapons, the new film directed by Zach Cregger, and starring Julia Garner, Josh Brolin, Alden Ehrenreich, Benedict Wong, Austin Abrams, Amy Madigan, and many, many others. Thankfully, in comparison to Longlegs, which was one of my most anticipated films last year, this film actually lived to the hype and then some, and it's an easy 10 out of 10. If you've seen Zach Cregger's debut feature film Barbarian, you would know that when you went into watching Weapons, you can't believe whatever was shown in the posters, the viral marketing, or even in the trailers, because Barbarian, what many people thought it was going to be, was this hostage situation in an Airbnb and a person trying to escape a very, horrible human in possibly Bill Skarsgård's character. But then, when you actually watch the film, it turns its head and becomes over the top and very entertaining for the most part. And even though I didn't love Barbarian, I love the twists and turns, and I love the fact that it tried something different with the horror genre. Weapons is similar to that as well, but it is very interesting because when you look at the trailers, the posters, and the viral marketing for the film, you would think that this is a straightforward horror mystery film, when really, Weapons is a hyperlink drama with some comedy alongside the horror mystery elements of the film, and it's very epic in scale, and it's an easy 10 out of 10, one of the best films of this respective year. I don't want to give any spoilers for this film because I want you to go in as blindly as possible, but what made me so interested about Weapons and what made it to be one of my most anticipated films of this year was the intriguing and very ominous questions that the film was giving you. What happened to these kids when they left their homes at 2:17 a.m.? Why did they leave? Is there a dark connection between all of them as to why they just left on their own will? Is there a dark and ominous force that is taking over this town? Why are people acting very erratically and very weirdly from the clips that we had seen before watching this movie? And why is it called Weapons? Why are all these characters connected to each other, or are they connected to each other? So on and so forth. This is a fascinating movie, and I think that Zach Cregger has done an excellent job of creating a very interesting premise along with a very interesting town. This town feels believable and very grounded, and even though there's some really outrageous stuff that are happening in the second half of this movie, it feels so believable because of the way that he's directed the film. Now, what I really loved about Zach Cregger's sophomore feature film is that this is a very ambitious movie. What I really enjoyed about Weapons is that it was kind of like what Jordan Peele did from Get Out to Us, in terms of making this epic film in terms of scale and scope, with a lot of commentary that is very ambiguous and very straightforward. And if you dig really deep into the movie after watching it, you'll realize there's a lot to take out of this movie. And again, Weapons, on the surface level, is a fascinating and very fun and very entertaining film. But deeper, there's a lot of takeaways that I don't want to tell you because, again, I feel like it's going to spoil some things about this movie. But I will say that this movie is very cool because it reminded me of Magnolia, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, in a sense that if that movie were thrown into a horror movie / mystery blender with some comedy, and it was just really well done. I love the fact that all of these characters got respective chapters within the story, and how all of these chapters, again, hyperlinked with each other towards the end where the epic conclusion of this movie happens. The one negative that I'll give for this movie is that I feel like the actual ending, like the last few minutes or so, is very abrupt. Kind of wish that it was a little bit elongated and explained things a little bit better. And even though there's a lot of questions asked in this movie within the first few minutes or so, I feel like some of the questions weren't really properly answered, or probably weren't even answered at all. And maybe if I rewatch this movie, I'll get a better sense as to what the answers could be. But either way, this is a very fun, very entertaining, and very, very good movie. The performances are fantastic. You see a lot of pain, anguish, anger, confusion, hilarious confusion at that. And everyone was really well casted. I think that everyone did a great job in this movie. And, when you get through all of the respective chapters, after watching the film, you understand, it was really cool that this was happening in the background, and then in the next chapter, it happens in the forefront. and so on and so forth. It was just really well done. Zach Cregger, again, has done a really good job of making this town very intriguing, very ominous, and very mysterious, and kind of somewhat believable. Some of the violence in this movie is very visceral and very in your face. And like I said, the last 20 minutes or so of this movie is a little bit in your face. So be prepared for some gore and some violence, okay? What's really interesting about this movie, too, is that even though, the dark night shots where you're seeing all these kids running ominously through the night, very quietly at that, too, even though those were really eerie and very well done, I feel like this movie was shot in almost an action thriller drama sort of way. I don't know how to describe it, but it doesn't feel like a horror movie at that. Yes, there are horror incidences happening within the film, but it doesn't feel like a horror movie, if that makes any sense to you. The cinematography is excellent. Every still and every chapter and every minute of this movie is just incredible to look at. It's just very distinct, and I loved the color scheme in this film. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Weapons is such an excellent movie. And again, every minute of this movie is not wasted. Every minute counts. So if you have to run to the washroom or if you miss like a minute of this movie, it's not going to really affect the ending for you, but it's going to be something where you're like, oh, I wonder why a person's doing this or saying this or acting this way later on in another respective chapter. But this is what I really want to see in horror movies in general. I want horror movies to be very ambitious and aiming for the sky. Because again, I love the horror genre. And I love it when a horror movie is aiming for something very grand and very epic. Some movies are considered horror movies that are in epic in scale, like maybe like the Alien series or maybe even the Predator series. But I feel like Weapons is a cool example of how you can make such a simple premise into something very, very interesting to look at. And again, some of the sequences in this movie, especially the poster right here, where the kids are running out of the house and like chasing after a certain individual, that scene, even though it's played for laughs at certain points, it then shifts back into a horror element. And you hear some sounds and you hear the running and just the quietness. It is well done. Again, Zach Cregger has a very promising and incredible career ahead of him, because even though I didn't love Barbarian, I love the way that he shot it and presented it. Weapons is a perfect package of a film, and I think it's going to go down as probably a modern day classic in terms of the horror movie genre. But yeah, I'm really trying hard not to spoil anything about this movie because it is so fantastic. I wish I could go on and on talking about this movie. And yeah, it was a blast. It is darkly humorous at times, so there's certain moments where even yourself, you'll be like, what the hell just happened? And the character in the movie will be like, what the hell? They don't say hell, they say another word, but you know what I mean. So that was pretty cool. It was almost like a meta experience where you're like experiencing whatever the character is experiencing as well. And yeah, just a fascinating movie, such a fantastic film. Thankfully, it lived up to the hype that I had for this movie and then some. And yeah, Weapons is a great movie. Even if you don't like horror movies in general, you will go into this movie and will be very surprised. Yes, there are some squeamish moments later on in the film, but overall, the mystery, the comedy, the drama, it all will entice you and really sink you into the story more and more as every minute goes by and by. But yeah, Weapons is fantastic. It is a definite 10 out of 10. I think maybe it will be my last 10 out of 10 for the summer. Hopefully there's some big surprises coming on later on in this month. But yeah, this was satisfying. This is probably one of the most satisfying watches I've seen in a while. So yeah, pretty much an encapsulated review at the end here. If you are looking for an epic horror movie, this is the movie for you. It's a hyperlinked drama slash murder mystery. Well, actually not murder mystery, sorry. It's a hyperlinked drama that happens to be a horror mystery thriller with comedic elements as well. It is a fantastic watch in theaters. Please do watch it in theaters because I think that's the intended impact that the director and everyone was trying to give you. And yeah, you're not going to have your money wasted. This is a fantastic movie. And like I said, I can go on and on, but I don't want to spoil anything. So go into this movie as blindly as possible. 10 out of 10. Go watch it whenever you can.